Hello and welcome to Lesson 2 of the Wild Apricot Boot Camp, where we're going to be covering online payments and event management. So, here's what we're going to take a look at. One is the types of events that you can set up in Wild Apricot, and a lot of the settings that are available in a more general sense. The event settings in more detail, that being the registration types, and then some more information about guests, registrations, the wait list, as well as event discounts. And finally, event management. That being the registration list, checking people in, tracking attendance, and using our mobile app. We're going to demonstrate to you how to make events with Wild Apricot, use the event registration types, make your event registration form, create guest registrations to capture additional information about people who might be coming alongside those who've signed up, using the waitlist to track registrants who are interested but there isn't space for them as of yet, and finally how to check people into your event. So, let's dive in. First and foremost, what are events in Wild Apricot? Well, they're gatherings to which you sell admission or special dates scheduled in advance. And they may be virtual, they may be in-person events, but there's something you'd like to collect advanced registrations for in some way, whether it's just a yes or no, it's a free registration where you just want them to fill out a form, it's a paid registration where you're going to be taking payments for your event, or if you just want to offer discounts to certain people. They can also be registered to by guests, or rather, someone can add guests as part of their event registration. You might have a member who wants to bring their spouse or a friend, and it's a great way to build up your email list and make connections with people and hopefully grow your membership as well. So there's a lot of opportunities there. Finally, it's going to integrate with Wild Apricot's gadgets for use in the calendars and forms on your site. Our event calendar gadget, which we'll dive into a little bit here, automatically populates with any events that you set up. So it skips any of the coding. You don't have to worry about setting up the event and then resetting up the event on your calendar. It all flows right through. Here's an example of how it would look. We have two views available. There's the calendar view, which you see on the left. It'll show the name of the event, and it can be browsed on a weekly, monthly, or annual basis, and people can skip ahead or backwards in the months. And we have the list view, which is a lot simpler and just lists the next upcoming event first, followed by the one after that, and so on and so forth. And you can even list the past events at the very bottom if you just want to have an archive of all of your events on your site. Here are a few resources I'd recommend you pause and just take a look at ahead of time. So we have the Events on Wild Apricot overview, which will tell you pretty much everything you need to know. There's the event calendar page, which goes into more detail on the calendar settings, the gadget itself that you can add to your Wild Apricot web pages and what's possible there. And then finally, we have the event settings and details, which is what we're going to be really diving into in just a moment. There are three types of events you can set up in Wild Apricot. The single session event, which is just your annual conference. It's 1 day long. You just need people to sign up for it, and 1 day and it's over. Very basic event. It's probably what's going to be used for the majority of the events that you set up in Wild Apricot. There are also multi-session events. That could be things like a training week. Someone signs up once, but it's like a school course. They're expected to attend all 5 days of the event, maybe Monday through Friday. So you just want to give them reminders every day, let them know, hey, today's session's coming up. Looking forward to seeing you there. And they'd be expected to attend them all. Finally, there's the repeating session. It's very similar to the multi-session, except maybe it's every month you just want to have everyone reminded that there's a weekly or an annual meeting coming up and they're going to be expected to attend it. Every Tuesday evening, for instance, or every first Tuesday of the month, you want to have an event where people can just join up. That's a good way to handle that. Now, events themselves can be public, members only, or admin only, and this is referring to the overall visibility of the event. You can have public events that only allow for members to register, or members-only events that are just totally hidden unless someone logs in as a member first. There's different combinations available of visibility versus registration type access. We're going to touch on that a little bit later. Admin-only events are not super useful in that only admins can actually see them. That's good more when you're just testing things out. You don't actually want to allow people to register quite yet. You can also have a registration form on your event, and in fact, most of them are probably going to have this when you're setting this up, but it isn't required. If you want, we also have very simple RSVP, yes or no, only registration just to make things super quick and easy for people. So you want to go with the event type that's right for you. Now, what are some of the things you can edit within the event settings? Well, obviously there's a description and the date, the who, what, where, when, and why. That's going to be the most important thing, because if you don't tell them that, they won't know where to go. Privacy and access. Is the event public? Is it available only to members? Do they have to log in to see it? Or maybe is it only available to special interest groups? Maybe you have member groups set up like board members who are the only ones who are going to be allowed to know about this event. There's a lot of fine-tuning options there that we'll touch on in just a moment. How about costs and discounts? Your registration types, or ticket types as we list them here. You can have members-only types at one fee, or maybe even free, and you can have public registration types that are at another cost. So, again, a lot of options available there for you to play with, including discounted registration types that require a code to sign up for. We also allow you to tag your events, and this is super cool because you can also filter the event calendar to only show events with specific tags. Some organizations have a ton of events, and they don't want them all on a single calendar. So what you can do here is have multiple web pages on Wild Apricot that only display events with a certain tag. We also offer waitlist settings. If your event is full, but you still want to see if people are interested, the waitlist is going to become in super handy. We'll be touching on that towards the end of the boot camp. You can set a limit on the overall number of registrations that you'll be accepting for your event. Say you've got a space you're renting, it only holds 100 people, something like that. We can help facilitate that. And finally, guest registration. If a member or even a non-member is allowed to bring someone else with them and you want to capture information about them, we've got a few options available for you there. Again, here's some really, really, really good help articles that I'd recommend you check out. Again, more information on just the event settings and the details therein. Some more information on multi-session events where you have someone signing up once for an event and effectively being expected to attend each session, kind of like a school course or something like that. More information about event visibility, restricting events to the public, or rather just keeping them open to the public, restricting them to members only, or locking them down to admins only, though, again, that's probably something you're only going to want to do if you're testing things out. Lastly, we have a guide here on registration types and tickets. That's the same thing. It's just we call them registration types. You may refer to them as tickets, your organization, but it's just different ways to offer different rates to different people within a single event. So let's jump over to the demonstration portion. All right, so here we are on the dashboard overview page, which is where you're probably going to land the first time you log in. We're going to jump over to events and then event list here on the left. Now, we've got a few events that have been set up ahead of time, but for example's sake, let's create a new event from scratch. A couple of options here, you'll see right off the bat. There are simple events, which are exactly what they say. They're very simple. They're just there if you want to collect a yes or no response on registration. No payments, no event registration forms. The most simple thing you can imagine. For the majority of the events that you set up with Wild Apricot, you're probably going to want to use this one over here, the advanced module. So let's go ahead and give that a click. And here's the first thing we land on, the Event Details tab. So the first thing we want to do is name our event. Let's see, let's call this one Important Meeting. I'm sure you'll have something more specific, but for our purposes, this will probably do. Tags. We can have as many tags as we'd like, just separate them by commas. This is going to be super handy later on when if you want to filter the calendar to only show certain types of events. Let's call this one Important. Maybe I want to have a filtered calendar that only shows events that I have deemed important. And of course, this is a meeting, so let's include a meeting tag as well. Notice that meeting was already one of the available tags because I had set it up on another event. So I could have also just clicked it to add it, but here we are. Click to remove or add it. All right. Now the location. Well, I'm going to assume everyone knows where we are, so I'm just going to say Wild Apricot office. Your members may need a more specific location, or maybe you have a clubhouse where everyone meets up, or an organization headquarters. You'll know what to put there. The time zone, in this case, I'm going to say that I'm in the Eastern time zone, being located in Toronto. And the start date and the end date. Actually, so this is important. You only need to specify a start date if your event starts and ends on the same day. So you can leave the end date blank. That's fine. So we're going to go ahead and just set a start date of February 4th. And actually notice we can scroll through the months or years here as needed. But February 4th will do just nicely for us. And my event will start right at 10 a.m. sharp. And let's say it's going to run until 11:30 a.m., an hour and a half long. Some additional options we have available here are the sessions. We have the ability to add just individual sessions of any date we'd like. So maybe, there's one here, one there on the 27th, and we can specify the times and all of that, but we're not going to do that for this particular event. We can also add repeating sessions. So this is where you want to have it running maybe every single day, 5 times, from 10 a.m. to 11:30. This is good for those week-long training courses and things like that. You can also, if you'd gone ahead and added sessions here, you can check this box to replace all existing sessions, but we haven't, and this won't be a repeating event or a multi-session event, so for now we're just going to hit cancel. But those are what you're going to want to play with if you want to explore the multi-session event functionality. Now, another thing we can do is list the event registrants on the site. We can show registrants who want to be listed via a very simple attendee list that just shows their first and last name. For some organizations, that's nice. You want to know who's coming, and for some, it doesn't matter. We're going to leave it unchecked for now, but you do have the option to show it to everyone or just to other members. And you can also include pending registrations, which you see here from this little tooltip would be anyone who hasn't actually paid yet. Maybe you want to just list everybody. It's totally up to you. Down here in the guest registration section, this is important. What do you want to do when guests attend, if guests attend? Do you want to add these guests to your contact list? It'll count towards your overall Wild Apricot database limit, but that can be really good for later engagement. Maybe you want to reach out to those who aren't members yet, who came with somebody else, and just say, hey, everybody, hope you enjoyed our event. If you're interested in membership, here's some stuff you should know. There's a lot of opportunities there, so it's definitely worth considering. If you do want to do that sort of thing, I'd recommend this setting right here. Add new guests to contacts list only if email entered. If they don't have an email, you can't email them, and they're just taking up space in your list, so they're probably not super helpful to keep around. But this setting right here is a really good one if you want to reach out to non-member contacts after an event. Over here in the description box, we can do a lot of things. Hope you can make it. You can write anything you'd like about your event. You can use the More settings over here to insert links to files, or perhaps an image. We've got one stock image here that I'll go ahead and insert. There's a few settings here as well if we want to write text around it, or resize it, or maybe add a nice red border around it, something like that. You can experiment. This is just a regular text editor like you're probably used to from the Content Gadget. And if you're not used to it from the Content Gadget, we'll be touching on that in a later boot camp lesson. Don't worry. So there's a lot you can do over here. You can also just bold your text, add tables, links, anything you might need. Now this section down here, additional event information, is really interesting. This is where you're going to want to insert things like Zoom links if your event is going to be online. Any information you enter here in this additional event information field, which is just a text field, is going to be inserted into the extra event info macro in your event registration confirmation email. So if you only want to share the Zoom link with those who have actually signed up and paid, this is what you're going to want to use. In this case, let's pretend there's a door access code that I only want to share with those who've signed up, so I'll type door access code, and quite possibly the worst door access code in the world, but there it is. And so with that, we've built all of the details that we need to get the basics of our event set up. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the save button up here in the top left. Now we can also control the visibility of our event. As you can see, by default it's set to admin only, and that's so it doesn't immediately appear on the site and broadcast its existence to everybody. If we click this, we've got a few options available. The event can be public, so that everyone on your site can see it. Or, if this event's only for members, we can choose the restricted option, and then we've got a few additional options available to us. If it's just for all members, we can choose all membership levels, or maybe just one. And if it's just for certain member groups, maybe board members, you can choose that option. And in that case, we wouldn't want to check this option. In my case, this is going to be a public event. Anyone can sign up, and anyone can see it. Now over here we have the registration form options. If I click Edit here, I'll be able to click Add New Field, and maybe add some specific fields that only apply to this event. In this case, I want to ask people for their meal choice. So I'm going to hit the radio buttons option, which only lets them choose a single option. I'm going to say type meal choice. I'm going to make it a required field. I need people to fill this out so that we know how many of each item to buy for the event. And then I'm going to add my choices, one per line. Let's do chicken, beef, and just to be safe, vegan. Down here, we can choose field instructions. If we want to add any clarifying text that we think might help people, please choose what you would like to eat for lunch. These field instructions are going to appear just like this text does here, just as lighter gray text below the field, so it just clarifies its particular option for users. This select predefined values to insert isn't terribly important. It's used to insert US states, provinces, or countries. Most of you won't need this except when you're setting up fields elsewhere, so we're going to ignore it for now. I don't need any additional fields. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And you see here, we've got both our common fields, first name, last name, email, and phone. Common fields are used on all forms on your site once again, and the custom fields which will only be applicable to this particular event. Now there's a few other tabs here, registration types and settings, emails, and registrants and invitees. We're going to touch on all of these in just a moment, but for now we're going to pause and head back to our presentation. Alright, so let's cover event registration types in Wild Apricot, as well as guest registrations that can go along with those. So as mentioned earlier, we call them registration types in Wild Apricot, but at your organization you may think of them as ticket types for your event. You can offer multiple registration types at different costs. You can control whether or not people are allowed to bring guests, how many guests they're allowed to bring, and what information you'd like to capture about those guests as well, which is a really good thing for following up and engaging with those people later, conversion opportunities and things like that. Here are a couple of examples very quickly of what this guest registration form would look like, as well as the registration form itself. On the left, you have an example of what someone would see if you're only collecting the number of guests they're bringing. So they'd enter their information, first name, last name, email, things like that, and they can just type in the number of guests. Or on the flip side, if you're collecting more information about the guests, they can hit the Add Guest button and then fill out their guest information. And then you can even control whether or not that person gets added to the contact list, so you can follow up with them later. We're going to demo this in just a second, so you'll get a much better picture of it in just a moment. Let's talk a little bit about editing an event registration type, which is how people are actually going to register for your events. Here's a brief overview of some of the settings that are available. So right off the bat, you can have the registration type be enabled or disabled. So maybe there are some special registration types that you only want to be available for a limited time, early bird registrations, things like that. Or it's just something you want to be able to shut off when the promotion period's over. You can toggle those registrations as on or off, enabled or disabled. You can, of course, define the price of your membership, allow multiple people to register under the same email address. That's what this multiple registrations option allows. And you can also restrict the availability. And this is really important when it comes to offering members only versus public rates. We're going to, again, jump into this in just a second, but here is a preview of what you're going to see coming up. Additionally, you can offer registration types that are restricted by registration codes. And here on the left, you can see an example of how that would appear. They'll see the price, they'll see that there's a special rate available, but they'll need a registration code to actually access it. And you can define that registration code to be anything you'd like, maybe a keyword or something like that, or you can just have our system generate it for you. Either's fine. Here are a few resources from the help site. They're going to dive into more information on everything we're looking at. Again, I highly recommend pausing and jumping into here just to get the most out of it. But let's go ahead and take a look at creating a registration type. And actually, let's also look at the registration process. I think we're about ready to do that. Here we are inside of our event, the important meeting that we set up previously. Notice that we've got it open in edit mode because we've just finished working on it. This is most likely where you would be. And we have the save and cancel buttons up here, which do indicate that we're in edit mode. It's time to add our very first registration type. So we're going to go ahead and click on the Registration Types and Settings tab. And we can define a few options here right off the bat. Let's say you have an overall registration limit for your event. So if you're accepting registrations from multiple ticket types or registration types, maybe members only versus a public registration type at another cost, but your event has an overall limit, maybe the venue is capped at 100 people or something like that, this is where you're going to want to take care of it. Say only 100 people are allowed to actually show up to the event total across members and non-members. This is where you fill that out. You can enable the waitlist if you want, so you can still find out if people are interested, take down their name, and maybe allow them to register down the road. And optionally, you can enable multiple registrations for the same contact. Maybe a husband and wife are registering, they use the same email address, but they have to provide different information. This setting will allow those two people to register. In our case, we're not going to allow that because we don't have that scenario, but just something to keep in mind when you're setting up your own event. We also don't have online payments set up quite yet, so we can only accept offline payments by invoice, but we will fix that shortly. We'll touch on that towards the end of the presentation. Now, down here is where I would go to actually add my registration types. But you'll notice the Add Type button's grayed out and I can't click on it. That's because we're opened in edit mode for the overall event. So we're going to need to leave edit mode by clicking the Save button up here. So I'll go ahead and click that. Notice we're not in edit mode now. We've got our edit, email registrants, reports, and export registrants buttons up here at the top. And the button is now available. I'm going to go ahead and give that a click. All right, so for our first registration type, we're going to obviously make it enabled so that people can sign up for it. We'll call this one members only. You must be a member to select this type. That's my description. They'll see this. The base price, well, we'll make it $10 for members. And we don't have any taxes set up, so this won't do anything. But if your organization has to charge sales tax, checking this box will ensure that that happens. We'll be able to set up taxes in another area of the system. Now, here you can set up an individual registration limit for a particular ticket type. Maybe you offer an early bird rate that only the first 25 people can sign up for. This is where you'd want to define that. Once 25 people, for instance, have come, this is no longer available. So I'll go ahead and enter that just for example's sake. And again, I'll enable the waitlist when the limit's reached. Maybe someone will drop out last minute. We'd hate to miss somebody. The waitlist will be a great way to capture their information. You notice it has pulled in my multiple registrations disabled for the same contact setting from earlier. Again, that just controls whether or not someone can register with the same email multiple times, which we don't want in this case. Additionally, I can allow people to cancel themselves by logging into their profile prior to the event. You can set it to do not allow. That's the default setting. Or you can allow cancellation within a certain number of days. I'm going to make it so they can't cancel up to 2 days before the start of the event. And now here in the guest registration section, I will allow guest registrations. I'd love to have people bring friends and family. And in my case, because we're collecting a meal choice, if you recall, we set that up as one of our registration fields, we need to collect full registration information for each guest. The first option here will only collect the total number of people they're bringing, but no information about the people. The contact information option is only going to collect basic common fields, first name, last name, email, just those. Full registration information will also include our meal choice field, so I'm going to choose that. Finally, for guest pricing, base price would just charge them the same amount as everybody else, so it'd be $10. In this case, because it's very likely that a member is going to be bringing a non-member as a guest, I'm going to charge them the non-member rate of $25. And I'm going to say that they can bring up to 2 guests per registrant. Now, as we mentioned, this is a members-only registration type, so down here in the registration type availability, I'm going to go ahead and select the members-only option, and we're going to restrict it so that both of our membership levels have access to it. Notice you can really break this down. You can have really discounted rates for certain membership types and less discounted rates for others. So you can really get creative if you know what you're doing here. Finally, the available period. If this registration type is only available up to a certain date, or you just want to cut off registrations prior to the event, maybe 2 or 3 days before, so you can get everything lined up and get everything shipped off to the printers, this is going to be the best way to control that. In this case, I don't really have an available period. I'm okay if people sign up to the last day, but you might want to experiment with this and only allow people to register up to a certain date. Finally, if unavailable, I can either show it with special formatting or hide it. And what this does is allows people to see that there is a registration type here, but if they don't have access to it, say they're a non-member, it tells them that. It'll show the registration type, it'll show the discounted rate, but it's going to tell them you can't pick this because you're not a member, and click here to become a member, which is really good for funneling people in and getting them to sign up. So for marketing's sake, I'm going to allow that to stay as show with special formatting. But if you have special rates you don't want to advertise, you can go ahead and click the hide option. That's okay too. And we'll go ahead and save that. Alright, so our event registration types are ready to go. We're just going to go ahead and hit the back button here to go to the main event settings page, because there's one last very important setting we need to get in place. And that is this one right here, allow registration. If you don't enable this, your event won't have a register button and people will be very confused. So make sure you click this. It's something that a lot of people miss. Once you see that blue toggle is on and that it says registration is enabled, you're all set. And now we can go ahead and jump over to begin testing the registration form. Alright, so here we are on the home page of the site. It's been pre-set up with a few demo pages, and I've gone ahead and logged in as our testing member, Frank Smith. All that's left to do is sign up for our event. So I'll click the event calendar option up here on our menu bar. There's our important meeting. I'll hit the register button. And because I'm logged in, my information is already pre-filling in. So testing@test.com is my email. And as you can see, because I've entered a member's email here into the registration form and signed in as a member, I have access to this members-only registration type, which is $10 as opposed to the public registration cost of $25. So I'll go ahead and hit that members-only type, hit it next, and my information is pre-filled. The common fields are being pulled in from my profile, which saves me the trouble of having to actually enter all this information manually, and all that's left for me to do is choose my meal choice, because as you recall, we set up that field earlier. I'll go ahead and hit chicken, and I think I'll go ahead and add a guest as well. So let's add Jane Smith to this event. She has an email of test2@test.com, and her phone number is slightly different than mine, and she'll have the beef. Finally, we'll hit done, and we'll have the opportunity to just review everything. That guest looks good. I could edit it or remove it, and I could add more guests as well. It all depends on the guest limit that you've added, and I've chosen to use 2 guests in this case as my limit. I'll finally hit next. And here, once online payments are set up, you'll see the option to pay online instead of a confirm button. But for now, because we don't have online payments, we'll just hit confirm, and that will generate an invoice for us to pay. Now, I could hand a check or cash payment to the administrator, and then they'd be able to go into the back end and record a payment against this invoice, or once online payments are set up, we'll be able to click an online or pay online button here and process our payment online. Now, let's jump back to the presentation where we're going to cover some of the more advanced fine-tuning options, event emails, and the waitlist. Right, so let's talk about some of the finishing touches and other back-end managerial things that you're going to need to do with your event, namely managing your registrants. With Wild Apricot, you'll be able to check in your attendees, view and update their registrations. I'm sure you've had a million times when someone reaches out to you and says, oh no, I made a mistake on the registration. I need to add another guest, or I need to update my name, or I signed up and picked the wrong thing. Wild Apricot will make it a lot easier for you to manage all of that. You can also record payments from the back end, say if someone hands you cash or a check, and that, of course, will allow you to very easily take registrations at the door. Here's a quick example of what the interface is going to look like, and we're going to jump into a demo in just a moment. But as you can see, it's easy to just check in attendees by checking a box, or record a manual payment if they hand you a cash or check payment. We also have a mobile app for event registration, and this is pretty neat. It's the mobile app for members specifically, as it allows users to see upcoming events that your organization is putting out there and register for them as well directly through the app. So it's good for people who don't always have the computer sitting right in front of them. Maybe they're always on the go. They can download the app and they can register pretty seamlessly there. Note that it will be branded as a Wild Apricot app. We don't have custom branding available for it at this time, but it's still a very useful tool, and you're more than welcome to give it a test run. We'll also talk a little bit about event emails, because this is obviously how you're going to notify your member base and non-member base about what's coming up. You can send it to 3 announcement emails, which go to those who haven't registered yet, 3 reminder emails, which go to those who have registered yet, and therefore could contain some more specific information about the event. And we also have automated emails that go out to those who have confirmed their registration, i.e. paid for it, or just hit confirm if it's a free event. Pending registrations, those who have not yet paid for their registration, and also waitlisted emails for those who don't have room for them yet, but you want them to be able to attend down the road. Here's another quick screenshot of what the interface looks like. We have the ability to send up to 3 announcements, up to 3 reminders, and you can send them immediately, or you can schedule them to go to people at a future date. So you can set the whole thing up and just kind of let it run for you in the background, so you don't have to worry about going in and manually doing it yourself. There's a help site article on the right there all about event emails. Again, very good resource to check out. Feel free to give it a click and give that a read through for more information. Let's jump into a demonstration of these 2 tools. Okay, here we are on our important meeting event once again. I've landed on the event details tab, and to view those who have signed up for the event, go ahead and click Registrants and Invitees over here. And here are all of our registrants. I've taken the liberty of capping our registrations overall at 10, so 8 plus 2 guests, just so we can demonstrate some of the other features a little bit more easily. Here's everyone who signed up for the event, and I have already gone ahead and checked some people in as they showed up. This is something you'll probably be taking a look at after the event has actually gone through. It's as simple as checking the checkbox next to their name to either check them in or mark them as checked out or not attended if you accidentally checked the box. You can also see over here whether or not they actually paid for their registration. Some of you may configure your event to automatically cancel registrations if they don't pay right away within 10 minutes. That's something that'll be available when online payments have been set up, which they haven't on this test account. But it's a very easy toggle when you're creating the event. You'll see it right there. If we have some people who didn't pay or didn't pay in advance and maybe paid at the event, we can also record their payments here quite easily. So I'll just go ahead and hit the record payment button. Let's say I was handed a check at the event, and I can just maybe put the internal note, check number 123456. Internal notes are something that only appear for you, the administrator, so it's really good for keeping track of really anything that you think will be helpful down the road. You can also include a comment for the payer if you think it'll be beneficial for them. They'll see this if they review their financial records in their profile. In my case, it won't be necessary. I'll just keep the internal note for the check number. Then I'll hit save. I'll head back over to my event and back to the registrant list. And now you can see the user has been marked as paid and checked in as well. If you add registrants from the back end, you'll actually have a few options available to you. You may get a call from an older member of your group who is having trouble accessing the website. Maybe they give you a call and they need your help adding themselves in. So you would just click that Add Registrant button up at the top and enter their name. Let's go with Susan Smith. And she may not even have an email. As an administrator, you have the right to bypass the email field, though for the public users it will be required. And Susan's a member, so we'll choose the members-only registration type for her. And she let us know that she would like the chicken option for her registration. So we'll fill that in for her, and then we'll hit save. Now here, we can actually confirm without invoice if we're going to be comping her registration, or we can hit generate invoice to set one up for her. So I'll just hit generate invoice, $10 because she's a member, and then I'll hit the save button here. And that's been invoiced to her. Now, if I go to her profile, you can see under her events tab here that her registration is listed, and this is a really good way to check every registration that someone has, or every registration someone's made, every event they've attended on a profile basis. Just for reference, to get to this, you would go to Contacts, List, and then just click on that person's record. And there's the Events tab there. Now, we'll head back to our event, back to the important meeting, and we'll mark Susan as paid. All right. Another cool thing you can do with the registrant invitee list is filter it so that you can send targeted emails to specific people. So right now it's going to land on the current registrations filter, which just shows everybody. Paid, unpaid, checked in, not checked in. This is good if you just want to send an email to everybody or just view everybody who's signed up for the event. If you have people who, or if you only want to send an email or see people who have actually paid for the registration, you would choose this filter dropdown and then the completed option, which narrows it down. You see our unpaid person's gone. If you just want to see those who have something up with their record, most of the time it's that they haven't paid, you'd click attention required. There's that person. And if you want to get creative and maybe send a follow-up email after the event thanking people for attending, you could try the checked in option. Filters it to just those who have actually been marked as attending. Similarly, if you want to send a sorry we missed you email, you can choose not checked in, and there's everybody who didn't actually show up to the event. No matter what filter you choose, once you're ready, you can click the Email Registrants button here at the top, and this will only send an email to these filtered records, so 4 people in this case. And that'll take us over to the email wizard where we can start sending an email. But for now, we'll save an exit out of that. That's for another presentation. Now, on that note regarding emails, let's talk a little bit about the emails that we can actually send out from the system over here on the Emails tab. There's 3 announcement emails, which are sent to those who haven't actually registered for the event yet, as you'll see here. And there's 3 reminder emails, which go to those who have registered. You can see an example of each of these right here by clicking on the Announcement 1, Announcement 2, etc. link. We've already put some demo content in there for you, which you'll see as soon as you open up your trial account, but this is totally modifiable. So if you hit Edit, You see much of this is being generated via macros, which are just going to dynamically insert content into the email, but you can go ahead and put in your logo, anything you'd like. We'll touch on this email editor in a later video, but it's very, very customizable. If we go back to the event, let's say I want to schedule the first announcement email. I'll hit the schedule button there, and maybe I want to send it a week before, so I'll just hit 7 days before there. And you can even choose to send it only to specific people, and this is really important if your event is only for members, and you've maybe restricted the entire visibility of the event to members only. I could go to selected contacts. I could get as specific as saying it to only people who are part of a save search, but in this case I think it's going to be enough just to do membership levels, and then just all levels, and then hit schedule. But as this event is actually open to the public and to members, I'm going to choose the all contacts option. And you can see it's scheduled to go out, and it's going to go out on January 28th, 2021. Note that it also includes links to register. These links will automatically sign the registrant in, so it makes it very easy for them to actually fill in their information. And on a similar note, it's also important to note they shouldn't share that email with other people just because it does contain their login credentials via an encrypted link. They can also hit not attending if they don't want to receive any more emails about the event. Reminder emails are quite similar. They only go to those who have already registered, and usually are a good spot to put in specific information about the event. Maybe the door access code if it's locked off, or maps, or like a link to a Google map, directions to reach the venue, things like that. Finally, we have our event registration confirmed, pending, canceled, and new waitlist registration emails. We go ahead and hit edit here just to see some of our options. Note that when we're in edit mode, we can't click on these to actually edit them. We have to not be in edit mode to click those links. But what we can do here is choose who receives them. So the event registration confirmation email is the most important one. It is sent whenever someone fills out the registration form and either pays or just hits the confirm button if it's a free event. And we can choose whether it's sent to the registrant, to the registrant's guests, and optionally to the event organizer, which comes into play up here. Most of the time, the event organizer is just going to be the organization contact, whatever email address you've designated as the main contact email for your entire website. They're used as the reply to address on all emails, something like contact us at yourorganization.com. Or if this event has a very specific organizer, you can choose that person instead. And you can hit the change link to choose a different person. And choose them as the event organizer, and then they would be the ones receiving all of these. There's also email routing settings to take into consideration. It's another section of the site where you can choose additional email addresses to be copied on all system emails of certain types. So if you check this box that says copy emails according to email routing settings, and then check send copy to organizer, those additional people you've specified in the email routing settings will also receive it. I'm going to go ahead and select that, just in case I do set that up down the road. And with that, we should be good to go on the emailing front. I'll only send the one announcement. You can send up to 3. You know your organization best, so you'll know how many is too many. And then finally, we have the waitlist options to take a look at. Now recall that when an event's registration limit has been reached, we did enable the waitlist, which means that anybody who goes to sign up for the event now that the registration is full are going to be added here. And there's a few options available for us to look at. I can have the system set up to manually, or to require me to jump in there manually and register someone for the event if for some, like when it's full. Or I can just have automatic registration go through, which is probably going to be a lot more convenient for you guys. Just choose the automatic registration option. If there's a registration fee, it'll automatically generate an email and invoice to the user. And it can collect all the event registration information, just their name and email, or all contact information. I would, as the tooltip here says, we recommend choosing all event registration information, just because that's going to allow you to get stuff like their meal choice, which is important for this event. So with those settings in mind, I'll go ahead and hit save. And let's run through a quick simulation of a waitlist registration, and then jump back to see how it'll look here on the back end. Here we are on our event calendar page once again, and as you can see, our important meeting now has a join waitlist button because there are no spaces left. It's booked to capacity. We'll click the Join Waitlist button, and then we'll fill out our information. Just do 12345 at test.com and fill out the CAPTCHA real quick. All right. And because this person isn't a member, we'll just go ahead and use the public registration and fill in our information. And vegan. We won't have a guest. We'll just keep this simple. And finally, we'll join the waitlist. We won't be asked to pay yet. That'll come when the space opens up. At which point, per our settings, I'll be automatically registered and sent an invoice for this event. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how that appears on the back end. Back on our event here in the back end, we'll just click the waitlist and settings page, and there we go. There's the user who just signed up and joined the waitlist. So when a spot opens up, if someone cancels or we remove them because they asked to be removed, the person will be automatically notified and an invoice will be sent to them for their $25 registration. Finally, something else that's worth taking a look at would be the reporting option at the top of the page. So if we click on this reports drop-down, we have 3 reports available. The attendance list, which is just a nice, clean, printable page that lists all of your registrants. You can export this to a PDF, and if you're not going to have a computer at your event, you can use this with a pen and pad just to check people off manually. On the next option, we have registration fields. This is really, really useful, especially when we have a field like meal choice, where we need to know how many people chose a certain option within the form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the system I'd like to report on the meal choice field. I'm going to include pending registration, those who haven't paid yet, just in case. And I'll also show the participant details, just out of curiosity, so I can see who actually selected each option. Finally, I'll click Generate. And there we go. We know that 4 people chose chicken, 5 chose beef, and 2 chose the vegan option. So I know how many of each to bring, and no one will starve at our event. Finally, if we go back, we have the registrations by type report, which is more for your financial people, but it shows a breakdown of how many attendees you have in each category: paid, unpaid, partially paid, their total amount based on invoices. So here it turns out we'd be expected to collect a total of $215 if everyone paid their registration fees, and in actuality, so far we've received $180. And it also gives you this additional breakdown just for those who have actually checked into the event. You can also see the breakdown by registration type. Again, this may be very useful for your financial people. It can be exported to a PDF or to an Excel spreadsheet for them to take a look at. Lastly, here's a bonus tip. Let's say you have an event that sells additional things. So the registration fee is, let's say, $10, but for whatever reason you have additional seminars or maybe t-shirts, badges, something that's going to incur you an extra cost, and you'd like to give the user the option to buy it as part of the registration process. We have extra cost fields for that purpose. You're going to want to click on the registration form option here, click the edit button up at the top, and then hit add new field. We have a few options available. Let's use the multiple choice with extra charge as an example. And let's ask the person, would you like to buy clothing? It won't be a required field. I don't want to require them to actually pay for this, but let's say a hat for $25, t-shirt for $30, and, I don't know, towel for $15. Maybe you're selling branded merchandise at your event. If you'd like, you can pre-check some of these options, though in this case that probably wouldn't be required. And you can add field instructions saying something like, any amount helps to support our organization. Something like that, just to let them know. Similarly, we have the extra charge calculation field. And what that does is allows the person to enter a specific amount and be charged. So instead of asking them if they'd like to buy a hat, a t-shirt, or a towel, we could ask them, how many hats would you like to buy? And again, not required. And let's say, what was the amount we had for the hat? It was, Okay, whoops. Well, let's just say hats are now $10 each. And we can limit the order to a minimum amount or a maximum amount. Let's say 1 hat minimum. And if they really want to go all out, 25 hats maximum. And on the registration form, they'll be able to just enter how many hats they want, and it'll charge them $10 times whatever amount they enter. I'm sure you can think of some creative uses for this. Maybe you have seminars, or you want to just maybe ask them, hey, how many of a certain thing do you need? This will be the way to do it. So I'll go ahead and save that. And with that, let's jump back to our presentation. Finally, it's time to talk about online payment processing in Wild Apricot. We have support for 3 main payment processors: Wild Apricot Payments, powered by AffiniPay, PayPal Checkout, and Stripe Connect. If you're in North America, we'd recommend Wild Apricot Payments, as it is our preferred processor. It'll also help you avoid the payment system servicing fee that gets applied to any North American account that's not using Wild Apricot Payments. And it will also open up a couple of bonus features for you, namely the ability to process automatic recurring donations, and the ability for your members to save their credit card information to make multiple event registrations or any other back-to-back online transaction a lot easier. It's just a one-click checkout for them. So let me jump over and show you exactly how to apply for Wild Apricot Payments, or set up any other payment processor in the back end of your account. Here we are in the account, and we just want to go over to Settings, and then we'll click on Payment Settings. If you're in North America, the first thing you're going to see is this blurb about Wild Apricot Payments. It lists the transaction fee, which is 2.9% plus 30 cents per transaction, though note that additional charges may get passed along by the credit card provider, and you can click this link to see exactly what that would be. There's a lot of variables involved there. It also tells you what credit cards are accepted, and of course provides you with instructions on how to get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do if you'd like to apply for Wild Apricot Payments is click the Fill in Application Form button. So give that a click, and from here it'll just ask you for all of the necessary information to open up your account with AffiniPay, which will then link into your Wild Apricot account. Now, let's say you don't want to use Wild Apricot Payments at this time. No problem. You'll just want to scroll to the very bottom of this page where you'll want to hit the Other Payment Settings link. If you give that a click, you'll see the main payment settings screen where you can click Edit and then choose your payment system from the drop-down. So we've got Wild Apricot Payments, which you can connect to if you already have an account or would like to come back to it. PayPal Checkout, which again, just click the Connect to PayPal button, log in, and you'll be all set. And Stripe, same thing. Finally, down here below, we should touch on the other payment-related settings. You can choose your default country. You can choose the currency that's used by the system, and for Wild Apricot Payments, it's only supported in North America, so you'll have the option between Canadian dollars and US dollars. If you're international, the payment currencies that are listed here are going to be entirely dependent on your system. So PayPal, you'll see one very large list. Stripe, you're going to see another. Choose whatever you'd like, and it will be used throughout your Wild Apricot account. Finally, there's the payment instructions. These are displayed in a few different areas of the Wild Apricot site, but one of the most important places these are displayed would be on the checkout screen. So let's say you accept check or cash payments, and you're going to be expecting people to mail you a physical payment for whatever they're signing up for, be it an event or membership. You'll want to fill these out with, say, your address information, telling them where to send the check. So just make note of this. It's super, super handy if you still handle a lot of payments manually. Now, finally, I'm going to show you what it looks like when someone actually makes an online payment through Wild Apricot. So here we've gone and we've signed up for the Spring Gala event with a $100 cost. We filled in all of our information, and we're hitting Next on the event registration form. And here you go. We have new options that you didn't see earlier in the presentation because we've now set up online payments. You can see right here, it'll show the user what credit card types are accepted, as well as offline payments for checks or cash. And you can actually control on a per event basis if you do want to accept online or offline payments, which will hide the icons accordingly. And we have 2 options here. Right now, because both online and offline payments are allowed, we have an Invoice Me button as well as a Pay Online button. Invoice Me just generates an invoice. They can come back and pay it later, or they can send you a check payment. So they'll want to choose that if they're usually going for offline. And we have Pay Online, which is going to take us straight to our payment processor. So we'll give that a click. And we're going to be redirected over to payments.wildapricot.com, where we are checking out via AffiniPay. It's a credit card processor like you're used to seeing just about everywhere else, and we can enter our credit card information, billing information, Optionally, store our credit card for faster checkouts in the future, and then finally pay. And upon making our payment, we'll be returned back to the main profile screen just to confirm our transaction. And just as an added bonus for our friends who like Stripe, here's what the transaction page would look like if we're paying via Stripe. Same thing, invoice me option, pay online option, and we'll click pay online and we'll be redirected to Stripe checkout to make our transaction. Simple as that. And with that, we arrive at the end of day 2 of the Wild Apricot Boot Camp. I want to thank you for sticking around. If you want more information, just to expand on everything, check out gethelp.wildapricot.com. We've got text and video-based guides for pretty much every aspect of the system. And on that note, I'd also encourage you to just jump back in the presentation. Check out those links we highlighted. They're going to be super, super helpful for just expanding on everything we've talked about today. In addition to that, if you want to chat with one of us and make sure the system's a good fit, or you just want to send us a list of questions you have about the system, or you just want a little bit of guidance when you're getting things set up, send us an email, coaches@wildapricot.com. We'd be more than happy to help you out. If you'd like to open up a free 30-day trial, if you don't have one already, you can go to www.wildapricot.com and click the link to open a trial right there on the home page. We've got some other good stuff there, feature overviews, testimonials, example sites, everything that you might want to find. And with that, I want to thank you for attending. I really do hope you found the content helpful, and we'll see you in the next video. This is Coach Steven signing off.